This week on the Autocar Show, we've got tons of action. First, we get an exclusive drive of the bigger, bolder and all-new Toyota Innova. Then we find out if the Italians can really give a different spin to the traditional big and heavy cruiser with the Moto Guzzi Audace. And finally find out the major news that Hormazd has on Nissan in Autocar Confidential.
Welcome to sometimes sunny, sometimes rainy, sometimes cloudy Jakarta. And the car we have today with us is the all-new Innova. Now, Toyota haven't given us a new Innova for a long time. But this new car is more stylish, more luxurious, more practical, and it even comes with a lot more power. We've got the car with us for the whole day. Let's see what it's like. The first thing that strikes you about this new Innova is that it looks much nicer in the flesh. The frameless grille works particularly well. It forms a focal point of the design from where all the lines originate, and the fact that it bulges out makes it look three-dimensional. And the new headlight and grille combo make it look even more attractive. But it still looks very van-like from the side. Toyota has tried every trick in the book. It has a tapering glass house, a kink in the window line, a wider base, but the van-like dimensions still shine through. And what doesn't help is that this new longer car is built on the same wheelbase as the current one. That said, the ridge or mini ledge that runs along the shoulder line of the car does give it a degree of separation, and the boomerang-like tail lights at the rear look great. While the earlier Innova was boring and practical, this one is much more luxuriously appointed. It's beautifully designed. Just look at the swatch of wood that runs right across. These Fox aluminium inserts do really well on the center console. It's got this nice big touchscreen, lovely highlights in chrome here, beautifully crafted steering wheel, new dials, another color screen in the center. It's a big step ahead. There's no doubt that the ambience and the feeling of luxury have taken a big step forward. The sweep of the dash is stunning. The central console appears to weave in and out of the dash, and Toyota's engineers have combined wooden surfaces, brushed aluminium and metallic brackets with devastating effectiveness. Even the door pads look like they belong on a more expensive car. While the design of the dash looks good enough to pass muster on something like a Camry, overall quality levels are actually more Corolla. The glove box has a few hard plastics that rattle when open. Some plastics in the lower half of the center console are clearly low rent, and the quality of the vents, well, they need to be a touch better. The new car seats are also considerably larger and more supportive, both for the thigh and the back, and there's a big step up in comfort on the all-important second row as well. And that leads us to the reason why these cars are so popular in the first place, the third row. Now, in most 7-seaters, the third row is quite compromised. It's cramped, it's difficult to get into. But in this car, the Innova, they've concentrated on giving you more space in the back. And it is pretty easy to get into the third row. Just watch this. It flips in one shot with just lifting up one lever. The step up isn't too much. Once you're sat in the back, it's pretty apparent that there's a lot of space and comfort here. There's enough knee room, especially if you adjust the second row. You are sat a bit low, but there's enough thigh support and comfort. You have your AC vents, you have a big cup holder here. There's even a 3-pointed seat belt for the center passenger. So, all in all, good stuff. There's also a fair amount of luggage space in the back, even with all 3 rows up. You get a luggage net, and there's even space to place the center headrest for the third row. Now, under the hood is also a new engine, Toyota's new 2.4 2GD diesel engine. Now the new Innova gets an updated engine. You get 147 bhp now, which is a substantial jump over the earlier car. And that of course means you put your foot down, there's a lot more power. Yes, it has a greater spring in its step, but there is a bit of lag from the turbo, especially at the bottom end. And it's nowhere near as quick to respond as the current car. Still, the 6-speed automatic transmission and the engine work so well together, the lag is well masked. Part throttle responses are much stronger, and this leads to an air of effortlessness, something the current Innova is sorely lacking. You get 3 separate modes for the engine. There's Eco, which is obviously the most fuel efficient one. There's the normal mode, which allows you both economy and power. And then you get this power mode, where you really do get a bit of an extra kick. It even feels reasonably quick when you drive flat out, the engine pulling all the way till 4,500 RPM. The problem with this new engine is that it isn't the most refined around. There's a bit of a gurgle and a gravelly note around 2,000 RPM. Put your foot down and it gets a bit noisier. And then by around 3,500–4,000 RPM, you can really hear the din. What is surprisingly nice is this 6-speed auto. It's quick to shift, and you even get a nice Tiptronic function. It comes down the gears quite quickly, it's responsive, and it really is quite nice to drive out on the move. Get up to speed and you can feel the solidity of the Innova. For a big heavy vehicle, the stability is surprisingly good. You can hold on to high speeds without the car feeling nervous, and it sits rock solid at even triple-digit speeds. It really is nice. But it's not only the straight line stability that the Innova is good at. Also, a big surprise is how stable it is around corners. You can carry a lot of speed into corners, and the Innova just sorts itself out so beautifully. It really is nice to drive. And as for ride, the earlier Innova was renowned for its comfortable ride, and this car takes it to the next level. There's even more compliance, there's even more bump absorption, and even the sharp bumps don't seem to unsettle it much. At city speeds, some amount of rough surfaces do filter in, but the bumps are soaked up even better as speeds rise. Still, the Innova has always been our benchmark for ride, and this one feels even flatter overall. The new Innova, however, feels much larger from behind the wheel. It feels wider at the front, a little less keen to change direction, and it isn't nearly as agile as the current car. What is surprising is that the steering is a bit heavy, especially while driving at low speed and in traffic, and you do have to put a bit of extra effort into it. Of course, if you want to avoid the heave-ho, all you have to do is get into the back. Look at the construction of the seat, the quality of the fabric, the way this door pad is put together. You never had this on the earlier Innova. Of course, there's also the comfort. Nice long seat base, plenty of comfort there, good backrest, good support for the elbows. This really is a good car to be chauffeur driven in. The Innova has always been the MPV that blurred the lines between practical transport and personal mobility. And this one takes the game further. The new Innova is a big step forward for Toyota. It's a lot more comfortable inside, it's a lot more spacious, it's beautifully built, it's more luxurious on the inside, it's nicer looking on the inside, and it even comes with a much more powerful engine. It's not perfect though. The steering is a bit heavy, the engine is a bit noisy, and this car could be at least 15 or 20% more expensive than the current one. And that brings us to the key question: will customers be willing to pay that extra amount? We'll only be able to tell you that once the car is launched and priced in India. But for now, it remains a car worth waiting for. See you then.
It's time for a break, but don't go anywhere, because coming up ahead, we ride the Moto Guzzi Audace. And what big news does Hormazd have from Nissan and Volkswagen? Find out in Autocar Confidential.
Now, as a kid, I had my heroes from the world of motorcycles, and I dreamt that if I was lucky, one day I'd get to see them. If I was really, really lucky, I'd get to ride it, and if I was really, really lucky, I'd own one. Well, today I'm getting to live my dream a little bit with this motorcycle. Well, the bike that I was completely besotted with was the Centauro from Moto Guzzi. Well, this isn't the Centauro, but it is a Moto Guzzi, and it has the same DNA even today. A very distinctive feature of Moto Guzzis is this, the engine configuration. Well, this is a V-twin, but unlike most other V or L twins, this isn't transverse. You can see the cylinder head sticking out here because it's longitudinally mounted, and that's what gives it so much muscle.
And a dash of style is ingrained in everything. The handlebars are matte black and flat, inspired by drag bikes. The matte paint has a tinge of gold dust in it. Take the instrument cluster for instance. It's simple, but its large size makes it readable and handsome. But there are some oddities as well.
I find this cute and ridiculous all at the same time. On a motorcycle that with oil but no fuel weighs 299 kilograms, you have a carbon fiber mudguard. I wonder how much weight that saved. But the ridiculous part is this Moto Guzzi sticker here, well, it's really just been stuck on.
At the rear, the LED tail lamps have an interesting layout. Impressively, the Audace feels like a solidly built motorcycle.
I just love its mix of old world charm and this muscular attitude, and it continues even when you start the engine. See that? It's rocking side to side and it's loud. You can hear the valves tapping away here. It's got this very mechanical feel to it, and check this out. When you accelerate, it rocks to the right because of the engine layout. It's really pretty cool. It puts a smile on my face right away.
There are more mechanical bits to please the gear heads. For instance, there's no chain drive. The Audace uses a shaft drive, and the sound of the gears meshing at low RPMs is apparent from the saddle. Under 2000 RPM, you can feel the shake from the engine, but from there on, it will pull to a near 7,500 RPM redline surprisingly smoothly and very, very rapidly. That means it's a properly badass cruiser.
But don't think of this as an old school low-tech motorcycle, because this has a fair amount of tech on it. ABS, of course. That aside, you've got traction control, which can be set in 3 different settings. 1 is the least intrusive, 3 is the most intrusive, and you can switch it off completely as well. And on top of that, you've got power modes. There's Veloce, which offers the crispest, sharpest throttle response. There's Turismo, which is nicer for cruising. And then there's the rain mode.
The electronics keep check on 96 bhp of power, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's plenty more than a Harley Fat Boy. A lot more emphatic is the 12.3 kilograms of torque that's dished out at 3000 RPM. Interestingly, the 1380cc engine uses twin spark plugs per cylinder. Twist the throttle and the Guzzi's motor wows. And work your way up the 6-speed gearbox and you'll be nudging 180 kilometers an hour without a hassle. But that's not what cruisers are all about. It's the way that the engine delivers the performance that makes it so impressive.
A large air and oil cooled cruiser. I mean, what can you expect from it? Well, certainly not what it delivers, because the Audace does a fantastic job of cruising on the highway, and that aside, it's also really good at pulling up top. It's smooth, it's responsive, it's just so much fun. A gearbox that works crisply. These are these small things that make motorcycling just all that much more enjoyable, and the Audace certainly is that. And it's not just the engine that impresses, even the chassis, the way the suspension works is also very impressive. Take a look why.
Well, a conventional 45mm front fork isn't cutting-edge tech, but the twin shocks at the rear get piggyback reservoirs and are adjustable for preload and damping, which is very handy. In standard settings, the Audace felt surprisingly pliant, but at the same time, it didn't feel sloppy either. It offered a great balance. So the Audace could be piloted through corners with finesse and ease. Peg scraping was, well, all too easy. No doubt the meaty rubber added to the sense of confidence through those bits. When it came to shedding speed, the Brembo brakes were positively incredible, but the ABS seemed a little bit too eager to cut it over these bumpy surfaces. It was almost as though the bike was reminding you that it was a cruiser, not a sport bike.
I've never thought of myself as a cruiser kind of guy, and over the years there have been some that have been fun, enjoyable, but the Audace has me hook, line and sinker. Yes, it's big, yes, it's heavy, but it doesn't feel as heavy as you'd expect it to, and I think a lot of that is down to its seat height. It's pretty low, so even shorter riders like me can enjoy it, and while it won't wriggle through city traffic, it certainly is agile for a motorcycle with those splayed out forks and its long wheelbase.
I had thought that the slightly forward set foot pegs and a handlebar that you need to reach out to would make long rides tiring, but it wasn't. It felt comfortable and enjoyable. The seat was plenty cushy as well. The Audace also boasts of a 20.5-litre fuel tank, so along with the smooth motor, stops on the highway can be far and few in between. At the end of the day, the Audace had surprised me. I always thought cruisers to be fairly unidimensional, too big and too heavy. The Audace proves that big and heavy cruisers can be fun, in more ways than one.
So, what's the hitch? The price tag, because this is a CVU. That's not all. Another chink in the armor is that it requires premium fuel, so if you plan to tour the country, you better plan in advance as to where you're going to refuel. But if you can plan your riding around that, I think the Audace from Moto Guzzi is going to be a splendid motorcycle to have in your garage.
Hello and welcome to Autocar Confidential. This is that part of the show where we unearth all the scoops, the news, and all the buzz that's happening in the auto industry. Now this week we've got some news about Nissan. Now Nissan's been struggling in the market for quite a while, but it is banking now on the latest Datsun product which is going to be unveiled at the Auto Expo. It's based on the Ready Go concept, and in fact is actually based on the Renault Kwid platform. It'll have a completely new body but the same 800cc petrol engine, but Nissan is going to differentiate it from the Kwid with its own distinctive styling. Now the good news is that the price will be absolutely bang on against the Kwid, but the not so good news is that the features will be a little less than the Renault. Now that's a bit of understanding that there is between Renault and Nissan alliance partners. So the Datsun small car may not have as much equipment as the Kwid does. But the real showstopper for Nissan is going to be its iconic GTR sports car. Now this is a car that has legions of fans all over the world, and it is officially going to be launched in India. But there's a bit of a twist, because the car that will be shown at the Auto Expo won't be the model coming to India. The good news is that there's an all-new model coming in March at the New York show, and that will be launched in India later on in the year. So that's what we have from Nissan, but there's also news from Volkswagen. Now the Volkswagen Vento engine, that's been localized in India. That was a big story from Volkswagen. They're making some of the parts over here. They've really knocked the cost down of that engine. It was a 1.6 which was downscaled to a 1.5 especially for the Indian market. Now the current 1.5 makes about 103-104 bhp. But what we've heard is that there is a new turbocharger coming for the Volkswagen 1.5 diesel engine, and that is going to boost power marginally, but it will make a difference to around 110 bhp. Now, if you remember, the earlier 1.6 litre diesel had about 110 bhp, so power is going to go back up to that level. It's not too much of a bump up, but discerning drivers will be able to tell the difference. Well, those are the nuggets I have for you on this week's Autocar Confidential, and with that, it's a wrap on the show. But don't forget to tune in next week, because that's when we put 23 contenders all vying for the Autocar Car of the Year award. So don't forget to tune in same time next week